Welcome to a special edition of Boxing During Dinner, and special because we're in a different location. This isn't our usual location, but it will be our location from here on out. It's Randazzo'S Little Italy here in Coral Gables in Miami, Florida. And right next to me, we have the owner, the chef, and a former damn good fighter, Mark Randazzo. Mark, welcome to Boxing During Dinner.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be a part of this.
And I really appreciate you, letting us do the show from here, because everybody I've mentioned that we're gonna do the show from here, and they're like, "Damn, I need to start going to watch the tapings because I love Randazzo'S."
Oh, that's good. It's a natural. We're kind of like a boxing-themed restaurant, and we have a lot of fighters that come in, a lot of ex-fighters, fighters, managers, trainers. So it's kind of our clientele. Since I used to be an ex-fighter, and I trained under Angelo Dundee and Georgie Benton. Angelo had taught me a lot about, during boxing to make relationships and maintain them. So when you're done boxing, you can, utilize. And it wasn't something I learned from Angelo other than fighting.
So Georgie Benton, Lou Duva, Angelo Dundee, those are some legendary trainers. You train under some of the best trainers that have ever existed in boxing and that will ever exist in boxing.
Well, absolutely. I was I was blessed, like I said, to, like I told you before, to be in what I call like the Harvard and Yale School of Boxing. I learned so much about boxing from Angelo Dundee, and I learned so much about. He told me, he goes, "I don't want to teach you about boxing. I want to teach you about life." And how to be nice to people and how to interact with people, how to travel. And Georgie Benton, he taught me how to read. He said, I got with George when I was 16 years old and I couldn't even read. And Georgie said, no, that's unacceptable. And the first book I ever read was Malcolm X. George made me read it, and he used to quiz me on it every day before he'd let me train in the gym. So, those things, a lot of good things came out of boxing for me.
Well, I have to ask you, the last few months have been cruel to the sport of boxing. Georgie died and then Angelo died. How did you take their losses? Because it must have not been easy.
I got a great story for you. I mean, it's about a sad subject, but I was having dinner 2 weeks ago with Bernard Hopkins, and I said to Bernard, I should train with Georgie Benton. He said, yeah, Philly lost a lot of good trainers this year. He said, we lost Holly Mims, Joe Frazier passed away. Now Georgie Benton passed away, and I told him, I said, I'm sad to say that I heard that Angelo Dundee is not doing well, and Angelo's from Philadelphia also. A lot of people don't know that because he was a New York trainer, but he is from Philadelphia, South Philly. And as I was telling Bernard, I got a text message from my friend Ramiro Ortiz, and he said, call me. And I called him, and he said, Angelo passed away. And I looked at Bernard. I said, Bernard, you're not going to believe this because we were just talking about it. I said, Angelo Dundee just passed away. And Bernard, almost fell on his plate. He said, that's amazing. That's so eerie. We were just talking about him, and you get a call that he passed away. It was just like, it was strange. But, I got to share that sad moment with Bernard Hopkins, who was, although he never trained with George, was very upset. With Angelo, was very upset because Angelo was an icon.
And speaking of Angelo and deaths in boxing this year, right behind you, there's an article written by Burt Randolph Sugar, who also passed away a couple of weeks ago. And if Alex could focus on there, there's a picture of Mark with Angelo Dundee. He told me that Burt Sugar, nice as can be, interviewed you for this article. What was your experience with Burt Sugar?
Burt was a great guy. He was a diplomat for boxing. Wherever you went, he was talking boxing. He chewing on his cigar. I was a club fighter. I was a sparring partner for Holyfield, and I was blessed to be able to fight for a world title. But basically, I was a glorified club fighter out of Chicago. And Burt Sugar could have wrote about anybody, but that's the kind of guy he was. He liked me, and he put me on the back page of Boxing Illustrated when it was a big magazine, and that was like, for me, like being in Harper's Bazaar. And he actually made me look good. he wrote a great article, and it's probably one of the greatest treasures for my career was the article that Burt Sugar wrote about me. But he was a legend, very intellectual guy, and knew boxing from all the eras of boxing. He knew every era of boxing.
Mark here sells himself a little short because he was a good fighter, fought for the cruiserweight title over in Germany. But with the hardcore fans have seen Mark Randazzo fight But Mark, you were a good fighter. You trained with all these great fighters, elite fighters, trained under these great trainers. We know who taught you how to fight. Who taught you how to cook?
It's funny you say it. It's funny you tell me that, because actually I always liked to cook with my mother and my grandmother, and I knew all her recipes. So when we would have training camp, we would rent out the whole floor of a hotel, and Georgie Benton would cook for the whole, all the fighters and sparring partners and media people. So I used to help him out, and Georgie kind of taught me how to cook in large bunches. So I said, George, I know how to cook. So I would take my recipes and times them by 20, and I kind of learned how to cook for big groups of people by Georgie Benton, because George was a phenomenal cook. He cooked soul food and I cook Italian food. So we'd have these big feasts, Holyfield, Mark Breland, Meldrick Taylor, Tyrell Biggs, Johnny Bumpus, Rocky Lockridge, Shelley Finkel, Lou Duval, Danny Duval, the boxing media people, we just have big table. We'd have feasts every day, Then we'd have to cut back on the carbs when we get close to the fights. But Georgie taught me not only how to box, but how to cook for big groups of people.
Look at that. Who knew? George Benton is the original Gordon Ramsay. He could have had Hell's Kitchen back then.
He was a great chef. He taught me how to make collard greens and, stuff for big bunches. It's one thing to cook at home for 2 people, but then to cook for 100 people, it's a different, it's a different animal. But Georgie taught me how to cook for big groups of people, and he was a great cook, great wine connoisseur, and he wore the finest clothes in the world. And he was like my surrogate father. He kind of raised me and taught me, because when I went with George, I was in a lot of trouble, and George kind of reprogrammed my mind into, thinking, about consequences. So he was a good man.
So he was a classy guy, great trainer, and taught Mark here how to cook. He has a very successful restaurant here, at Randazzo'S. Talk about the start of Randazzo'S. I know it was in another location at first, and where it's gotten to today, because everybody loves this place. I haven't met one person that has one bad thing to say about this restaurant.
Well, that's good. I mean, basically, I use the best ingredients, and I do everything fresh every day. And it's like boxing. Boxing, you're only as good as your last fight. In the restaurant business, you're only as good as your last meal. So every plate that goes out has to be perfect. And, I take it serious. Just like I'm training for a fight, I come in every morning. I prepare all the sauces. I stay on top of it every day with the discipline that I had in boxing. I run the restaurant with the same discipline.
When you were training, a lot of people like to run and train, a lot of people think of the Rocky theme. Do you have the Rocky theme going on in your head as you're cooking some meatballs and some raviolis?
Well, I always think when I'm cooking, I always like to make things that I cannot eat while I'm training, but I could eat after I'm training. So I add a little extra oil, a little olive oil, a little butter, No, I actually, I like to cook things that, that people enjoy and they don't have the ability to have every day. I like to recreate like the Sunday dinner in an Italian-American home every day of the week at Randazzo'S. I like to recreate that experience for people. This is Rocky Marciano, Rocky Graziano.
This picture we got here is one of your fights. Do you remember who you were fighting that?
Yeah, I believe I was fighting a gentleman named John Beckles from Chicago. There's Angelo and Sugar Ray, my good friend Evander Holyfield.
There's a picture here that I like. Right up here, there's you with Muhammad Ali. As we also showed his trunks. What did you get from Ali the times you met him?
Actually, it was great. I got to meet Muhammad a bunch of times because I spent 20 years with Angelo, and whenever he would come in town, he would call Angelo, and I actually got to see him when he was quite lucid. I actually got to meet him after the second Leon Spinks fight, and he was he was pretty good, and it was sad to watch him decline, But him and Angelo remained great friends, and every time he came to town, he'd call Angelo, and they would get together. But he's a wonderful guy. He hasn't had a mean bone in his body. He's just a lovable guy. I make homemade every day my Sunday gravy with pork neck bones, garlic, basil. I make this fresh every day. Then over here I'm doing the meatballs. I come in every fresh. I'm the only one that has the
What
recipe.
what would you say is the most popular dish here at Randazzo'S?
I would say the most popular dish is it definitely is the spaghetti with Sunday gravy. The homemade meatballs, which is my mother's secret recipe, and I make the homemade gravy every day. Usually I sell out every day. So that's definitely my best seller. Everything I use is imported from Italy. I don't blend, imported products with inferior products. Everything's pure. I use a Filippo Barrio olive oil like my grandmother used to use. I use the San Marzano tomatoes. You got to use good ingredients and then stay traditional to the recipes. We were full. It was a Saturday night, and my manager said, Don King's here. I said, oh, well, sit him down right away. He was with 10 guys. He said, boss, we don't have any room. I said, Jimmy, guess what? You're going to make room. So I came upstairs. These people were sitting. I said, you got to get up. We're not getting up, so you got to get up. Come sit over here. I'll buy you dinner, I told them. But I need this table. So they understood. And, we treated Don like a king, that he is. Don's been great for boxing, And he's been boxing, for the last 40 years,
Mark, obviously, boxing during dinner. We're gonna start doing the show from here. To me, it's like a match made in heaven. I mean, boxing. We got dinner. We love to eat. I love the ambiance, the music. I mean, this is gonna be great.
I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, it's a marriage made in heaven.